Guys, so we're going to start part two of this video on the different features of the Roman Republic. We started the last video, we talked about the geography, we talked about its early history, and we talked about how Rome came to what it was. So now we're going to talk about the actual government that they established after they defeated the Etruscans. So here we go. So as I said in the last lesson, the form of government that they established was called a republic. And it's a government where people elect representatives who will make the laws for them. And it's pretty much the same thing we have in the United States today, and it's also known as a representative democracy. So remember, there are two social classes, the patricians and the plebeians, and the slaves, of course. And so now let's get to kind of the sticky of each major position. This is kind of a good outline of everything, and we're only going to focus on the consuls, the Senate, and we're going to focus on kind of this area right here. And only because we're only really worried about three parts. So at the top, you have the consuls. The two consuls were elected by the assembly, and they both served for 1 year. They controlled the army and also had the ability to veto or deny one another. So let's say, for example, one consul wants to pass a law. If the other consul says that law is stupid and that law is not good, then guess what? That law does not get passed. And this all connects to the idea of checks and balances in an effort to make sure that one consul does not gain the upper hand or get more powerful than the other. Then you have the Senate. The Senate is made up of 300 patricians. Senators ruled for life. They are chosen by the consuls, and they control the money. Two things help you to control an empire: if you control the money and if you control the army. So that's why it's important to remember how important the Senate was. And in fact, the Senate would use its power much, much later on to do a lot of different things that could hurt and help Rome. But it is the Senate that is probably the most powerful group in Roman history during the time of the Roman Republic. And then finally, you have the assembly. And honestly, I should probably say the assemblies, because there's more than one. There's like the Council of Tribes, there's the Centuriate Council, there's a lot. But the plebeian council is who's kind of the most important. They're made up of plebeians. They had very little power, and they were the ones that still chose the consuls. They also were the ones that kind of passed laws for the plebeian class and kind of enforce them. But even this position was not one that was given freely. The plebeian council did not really come along until after the plebeians had literally tried to revolt against the patricians during something called the struggle of the orders. The Roman Republic has some other key points. You have checks and balances, which is one of our key terms, which is the idea that you have the ability for each branch to stop the other from taking too much power. And of course, you have a dictator. A dictator is someone who's elected to rule Rome for a short period of time, and they have absolute power during this time as well. And they're only usually selected if there's an emergency that requires a dictator to step in and try and fix whatever's going on in Rome at that time. Along with the struggle between the patricians and the plebeians, you have the 12 tables that got established. And the 12 tables are pretty much Rome's laws written out for everyone to see. Something to remember, before the 12 tables, there really was not a means or a way of knowing all the laws. So just like you had with Hammurabi and his code, you had the Romans establish these 12 tables for everyone to see. And it's pretty much the entire set of Roman laws for people to follow. And that way people would know, like, hey, you're being convicted of this crime for this purpose and this reason. So these are the 12 tables. These are the laws. Here you go. And these 12 tables were actually set up at a place called the Forum. And the Forum is the main marketplace and business center in ancient Rome. It's where you have the temples. It's where orators or public speakers would give speeches to try and convince people to vote one way or another. And it's also a place where they had festivals and celebrations. So That quick lesson is on the major features of the Roman Republic. You had the consuls, you had the Senate, the Assembly, and you also had the checks and balances, the dictator. You had the 12 tables, and you had the forum as a place in which they would meet. So that's it for right now for video number 2. And thank you. And please review this video at any time you want to make sure you know what's going on.